Welcome back to Murder with Friends. Today we're talking about Diane Downs. I'm joined by my friend Christine Medrano, and where we left off, we basically heard Diane's version of the night of the shooting. One of her children is dead, another one is in critical condition, and Danny is paralyzed from the waist down. But pretty early on, authorities are tipped off that something isn't quite right about Diane's story. And one piece of evidence that stuck out for me, or one sort of hole in her story, was that there was a witness that night that saw Diane's car driving on this road exactly where she said she was, and apparently Diane was driving so slowly that his speedometer couldn't move past, the zero mark. He had to slow down so much. It couldn't even get past 10 miles an hour, which doesn't corroborate her side of the story where she said she was speeding to the hospital.
Yeah, like if your children have been shot, wouldn't you just be like pedal to the metal, like you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Also, they say that she wrapped her arm with a towel.
Mm-hmm.
If your children are bleeding out, why are you wrapping your one singular wound with a towel, not like your child who's been shot in the neck?
Yeah.
Like, I was shot in the neck.
Now, her defense to that, and I want to get a reaction from you, her defense was she thought that if she treated her wounds first and got them to the hospital safely, that then it would ensure that her children would have a better chance of recovering because she'd gotten them to the hospital. I know it sounds like bullshit, but the thing with Diane is that as soon as authorities sort of turned their attention onto her, she had an answer for every single one of their questions. For example, why, and you brought this up, why did she get out of the car when a bushy-haired stranger comes out of the road in the dark of night? Already it's strange that she's driving on this abandoned road with her kids. But then, if I saw someone that might be in danger, my initial reaction would be to slow down, make sure they're not injured. I don't know. Honestly, I know too much about murder. I'd probably speed up.
And well, also the fact that she didn't just roll down the window and kind of she could just be like, "Hey, what's going on?" She could have left the keys in the car. She took the keys out of the car. That to me is kind of what are you thinking?
Yeah.
And maybe, I don't know, to me, to not take care of your kids first, I feel like that's every mother's instinct.
Yeah.
And were there apparently her bullet wound was claimed to be defensive were in the wrong way. It should have been through this way, but the exit wound was on this side.
Yeah.
Which probably tells you that it was self-inflicted.
You can already tell. So let's act this out. So if I was going to shoot you and you hold up your arm goes right here, and that's where I shoot you. But hers was as if she just shot into her arm.
Yeah.
Which doesn't. I mean, it is all.
She's lying.
It's possible to I don't know if she was really double jointed to flick it back. I don't know.
What angle?
And then another, her demeanor and her priorities following the attack were very strange.
Yeah.
She asks to speak to Robert Knickerbocker after the attack. And are you familiar with who Robert Knickerbocker was? He was her lover.
Yeah. The other person that she wanted to allegedly leave these children for, who was also another postal worker, right?
She's big on postal workers.
Her dad was a postal worker.
She loves the post office.
Long line.
But so this is sort of the motive that police find, that she was very much in love with this guy, Robert Knickerbocker, who lived in Arizona, and she was trying to convince him to move with her, to come with her to Oregon, and I guess she'd gotten it into her head, even though this man was married, and working on his marriage, even though he'd engaged in an affair with Diane Downs previously, that if the kids were out of the picture, that then he would want to be with her. I don't understand how you get to that place, but whatever, she obviously did. He even says that she'd made some sort of comments about whether or not his wife should live. Because his wife was another obstacle in the picture. And that's what you see with her. People are just obstacles.
But why would you go for your own children rather than the wife? I know that's a weird question to ask, but I feel like that's so much more dramatic.
Right.
I feel like maybe she saw that people would look to her if she murdered his wife over her children.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all awful, but...
Well, it's all awful, but she felt that the children were the ones in the way, that were inhibiting him from being with her. It's all very, very suspicious, and police are figuring things out pretty quickly, especially her demeanor in interviews. She does so many interviews. She sits down with anyone that will listen.
Yeah.
And she's very cold. She talks about the night that this bushy-haired assassin, came for her children in a really monotone way. It's really creepy.
Yeah, and she didn't even cry when she was at the hospital. There was like one report that said that she didn't shed one tear, and her child had died. I can't imagine, like, just thinking about it would make me want to cry if, like, I just knew someone who had died. I can't imagine being so cold and callous that you're just, like, you have no emotions, but that's clearly because she's
a sociopath.
A sociopath, yeah.
I think this is one of those cases where we use the words sociopath and psychopath a lot, unfortunately, in our day-to-day speak. Yeah. I accuse my dog of being a sociopath sometimes. But really, Diane Downs is a sociopath. She does not have empathy for anyone. She doesn't even really have, the sort of wherewithal to understand herself and how she comes across. Because she's doing interviews recreating the murder scene. Giggling, and she hits her cast, and she's like, oh, my cast.
How silly me.
It's like, you bitch.
I know. And it's kind of like, if you know enough to lie, why wouldn't you know enough to, like, fake the emotions? You know what I mean? I never understood that. If you're gonna lie, go the full way.
No, that's actually a really interesting point, and I think that really illustrates the disconnect that she has, where she knows enough to lie, and she's always changing her story. Yeah. Right when she could tell the police were on her trail, and she knew that arrest was pretty imminent, she apparently told authorities that the assailant had actually said her name prior to going into the car. So she's like, maybe it's someone I know, trying to throw them off. So she knows enough to lie. Yeah. She knows enough to deceive, but she doesn't have it in her to be able to express these emotions. And I actually have a clip right now of what authorities and what is widely assumed happened the night of the murder. Let's take a look.
Can you imagine what it would take to shoot your kids? Then have the willpower to shoot yourself, and then drive yourself to the hospital. That takes some guts.
Prosecutors allege Diane's emergency arrival at Mackenzie Willamette Hospital was an act.
Diane's very intelligent. I think she did a very good job maintaining her story and being consistent.
So, first of all, I think we both had a similar reaction. That music was really a downer.
And that wig, right?
The wig? Really, I love looking at dramatic recreations of notorious criminals and crime scenes and true crime, because they're so oddly fascinating and weird and just off in general.
A lot of Dutch angles in my experience. A lot of Dutch angles in Sepia.
Yes.
Something's awry. Look at the camera
Look at how awry it is. Yeah. So let's talk about who she was in these interviews, because something that is unique about her is that and I think she set a precedent for sort of the Jodi Ariases, the Scott Petersons of our time. Yeah. Once she was apprehended, once she was arrested, which was about 9 months after the murder, which May 19th, 1983 was the murder, and then she was arrested February 28th, 1984. She sits down and does a lot of interviews. My question for you is, we've already established she's a sociopath. Was she doing these interviews to paint herself as a sympathetic victim, or was this sort of a way of getting attention and connecting with people in a way that she was looking for? Like, she's craved this connection that she couldn't really comprehend?
I think it's the attention. I mean, you kind of look at her history in the past about, like, having these relationships because she kind of wanted validation, and I feel like, oh, people want to listen to me? I have a story to tell now. I feel like it wasn't so much as, like, a way to, like, paint her in good light. I think it was a way for her to garner attention and affection from people, even if it's, through being interviewed about your murdered children.
Do you think it was effective? Do you think that people saw these interviews and felt sympathy for her at the time? I know, looking back now, knowing what we know.
Looking back now, it's so hard to say, but I mean, I think in some capacity, maybe, you know, you're seeing this mother who's allegedly mourning, that you would feel some sort of sympathy for her. But looking back, I feel like, knowing what we know, that they weren't effective, because you're always going to want more, you know what I mean? Mentioning Jodi Arias, you know, she had like her 60 minutes, like multiple interviews. I feel like they weren't effective, and, you know, she even goes on to have her child.
I'm very excited that you brought that up, because the case of Diane Downs just gets weirder.
Yep.
It doesn't stop with the horrific night of the shooting. It actually just gets stranger and more bizarre and twisted. She gets pregnant, and that is revealed during the trial. And my girl Oprah actually sits down with her and asks her about her pregnancy. So let's take a look at that clip right now.
You were pregnant at trial. Why did you get pregnant again?
I was extremely lonely. I missed my kids desperately. I had just seen Christy on the 2nd of October, and it's like opening a wound and pouring salt in. I was extremely lonely, beyond belief and beyond explanation. And on October 13th, I just went and got pregnant because I was so lonely. I love my children. I miss my children. And I know that sounds simplistic. It really does. And I have to admit that. And that's why I say there's so much more feeling inside than I can give in 2 minutes.
So, reaction, please.
Get a friend, girl. Like, get a hobby, something. Oh my God. I've been lonely, but never so lonely that I'm like, I want something to be inside me for 9 months. Because you're going to be pregnant for 9 months. It's not like you're going to have the baby right then.
You're right. You don't just, she said,
And
I
you're
went
in
and got
jail.
pregnant. You're in jail. Your child will get seized. You don't just like have kids behind bars.
That was clearly, I think, to look sympathetic to people.
But how does that happen, Christine? How do you just get pregnant? Who is the male suitor who was like, oh yeah, I'll have sex with Diane Downs, who at that time, we already knew that she was on trial for killing her kid and for attempting to kill all 3 of them.
Dudes, man, the worst. I honestly don't know what kind of headspace you have to be in to be on trial for the murder of your children, and then to go out and have another child. That's
a couple of things too. She references seeing her daughter Christy.
Yeah.
She saw her daughter Christy when Christy testified against her. She was, I believe, 9 years old when she took the stand, and Christy was asked a pretty, really straightforward questioning. And who shot you? Mom. My mom. And so for Diane Downs to then go on the air and say, oh, I just seen Christy, I really missed her, I was so terribly lonely. It's really surreal to watch, because you even see Oprah's audiences laughing with her. And she's like, it sounds so simplistic. It's so wild, and I think the reason why it's really crazy for us to look at this, and just I think that we're, hindsight's 2020. We're really familiar with criminals that want the limelight and that use it once they get into that. But I think Diane Downs was one of the first one of the OG murderers, not serial killers, but killers of passion or with a motive that they felt was sound, even though she's a Looney Tune, that used the news cycle and the media to make their case. And I think that's what makes her so compelling. And then also we see through it from the get-go. Whereas Oprah's audience was watching this and being like, are we being punked? Ashton Kutcher isn't a thing yet, but are we being punked? I don't know. Well, I guess on that note, we should probably tease a little bit about the trial and the aftermath and how the Diane Downs case is remembered. So stick around, we'll be right back.